I'm going to show you how to get high performance color on your Micro Four Thirds RAW files. I'm going to go over a few things real quick. So basically, we're going to cover what do I mean exactly by high performance color, why Micro Four Thirds, what is Dynapac Mark I, the color theory behind Dynapac, and how Dynapac works in Lightroom CC. So basically, what do I mean by high performance color? Let's look at Lightroom CC here. And Lightroom CC, or like Lightroom Classic, basically, every time you've opened up a RAW file in the app, it defaults to Adobe Color. The colors don't look nearly as good as what you shot them at, well, at least what you saw them as on the back of your screen. And it's really because basically the color profiles that are built in here into Adobe Camera RAW are kind of a one-size-fits-all type of color profile. However, even if you use your camera matching profiles, I don't know if you've ever explored these. Basically, they're not doing, as you can tell, a whole lot for the image. Sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're not. Most of the time, they're not really optimized for the camera. Even though they say camera matching, they're not as optimized for the camera as is the actual in-camera JPEG engine, which is why a lot of cameras, when we're shooting, especially mirrorless, we see that the JPEG output is often far nicer than what we can get in a RAW file, and that's because it comes directly from the actual company, Olympus or Panasonic in our case. So with Camera RAW, it's a simulation of what Olympus or Panasonic would like to see happen with their RAW files. So basically what you get with high performance colors, you can go from this to this, and this is a real basic example, and you're able to pull back a ton of detail. If we look here versus here, I mean, that's a pretty big difference. And it's not like a special trick or anything. It's basically that all this information was here before, but the RAW profiles are not designed to are optimized per cameras, especially for smaller sensors. So even when you use the built-in profiles, you're losing a lot of information. So why Micro Four Thirds? Easy. Let me just pull up a keynote here. This is part of the Dynapac Mark I Masterclass, and I'm just going to basically show you, but I'll get into what Dynapac is here in just a minute. So why Micro Four Thirds? Well, the quality is totally more than good enough. You can see here my first cover I shot, or second cover I shot with Micro Four Thirds, which was a pen mini, a little $400 pen mini. You can see me working with the models. This is back like in 2011, so excuse the video quality. But basically, I'm shooting with a $400 early generation Micro Four Thirds camera, the pen mini, in low light, and the quality is good enough to land a magazine cover. The quality of these cameras has been good enough for years, not to mention the amazing files you get out of a camera like this, the G9. I mean, the quality is way good enough, but between miseducation and misinformation online, people think that you can't shoot in low light, you can't do a variety of things with the cameras, which is just ridiculous to anybody that knows. And here's proof, again, low light magazine cover with a pen mini in 2011. And then later on, I upgraded to the original Olympus OMD EM5 Mark I, and I ended up shooting a bunch of magazine covers with that camera as well, celebrities and politicians and artists and a bunch of cool people. So the quality is way, way good enough. And that's kind of what led me to basically Dynapac, right? So what is Dynapac? I'm going to scroll down here further along in this keynote. By the way, this keynote deck here is part of an hour-plus long class I go through that teaches you how to use Dynapac, and we go into all the stuff in detail. But briefly, Dynapac is a set of high-performance profiles and RAW presets that I made for Adobe Camera RAW. So it works with Camera RAW in Photoshop, Lightroom Classic, Lightroom CC. And if you're on Lightroom CC, it also synchronizes with your mobile device. So even if it's not your main Adobe Camera RAW application, if you use it with Lightroom CC, like what I do, you could also use it on your phone and your iPad, and you can go backwards and sync from your iPad and iPhone to Lightroom CC. It's pretty rad process. But so essentially, Dynapac is a set of profiles and presets. The presets call up the profile, and they're designed specifically for micro four thirds sensors using Adobe Camera RAW, so Lightroom, like Photoshop Classic. The difference between a profile and a preset is a profile gets a little bit closer to the raw code, and a preset kind of lays on top of the profile, but the profile is the underlying color science behind all of it. And then the preset, when you apply that, if you've ever applied presets before, you can see all the different adjustments, and you can go in and kind of tweak that. So Dynapac includes 4 profiles and then different presets that work with the profiles. Let me explain a little further. So basically we have Dynamaxx. This is kind of the core technology here. It essentially gives you more dynamic range than what you actually were able to capture, or well, what you thought you captured. The data is there. It's not faking it. It just brings back in a lot of that data. So it's great to use it in high contrast situations or other situations where the lighting was just really tricky. Dynamaxx is a great place to see, even if you're just looking at the image to see if you have enough detail and a highlight and shadows. Dynamaxx is a great profile to start with. Also, if you want to make your own profiles or your own presets, you want to start with Dynamaxx because that's going to give you the most dynamic range in your image, and then you can layer on your own custom looks on top of that. Pannachrome BC is for bold color, vivid colors. It's a little bit warm, as you can tell from the logo. It's warm, it's rich. It brings a lot of pop to your colors. It's great for portraits. Anywhere you want to kind of give that more like old school Kodak, I don't want to say Kodachrome, but Kodachrome inspired type warm tones. Pannachrome is a great place to start. Oneg Super is going to give you some rich color in the blues, and also give you more dynamic range out of the gate than, say, Pannachrome, but either can be adjusted to suit your needs. And then there's Micropan, which is kind of like your classic black and white. It's like your Tri-X if you ever shot film. It gives you even tonality. It's a great place to start. Think of it almost as Dynamaxx, but the black and white version of that. So when you get the Dynapac, when you use Dynapac, you get, as you can see in the left screen here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 presets that pull the profiles on the right. So one is you can actually reset the entire system so that you go back to just Dynamaxx with no adjustments at all. You can add a curve kit. So curve kit puts the points into the curve. So then you can do more fine adjustments to your tonality and your color with curves. And this is great if you want to use Dynapac or Dynamaxx and then add a curve kit and start making your own color. And then we got different versions of Micropan, Oneg Super, and Pannachrome. And I'm going to get into the color science behind this in just a moment. But you could see here basically from left to right the different effects. I'll make that a little bit larger for you. The different effects of Dynamaxx through Pannachrome. So let's go into the color theory behind it. I'm going to be brief on this. In the masterclass here, we go in quite deep into color theory. Not quite deep. We go deeper into color theory. It's like a basic color theory class. Long story short, my friends, you don't have to spend a ton of time mastering color theory to be able to understand it and apply it. So basically, we're using 2 different types of color harmonies with Dynapac. We're using complementary and analogous. Complementary is what you see on the left. It's essentially colors that are on the opposite side of the color wheels, so they complement each other. That gives you more of an appearance of contrast, brings the eye in right away. So in this case, blues and cools and warm tones are complementary, And you see that this particular complementary harmony on the left in like movies, like the orange and teal look. You see that all over. It's been done to death, but you could still use complementary colors, even warm and cool in more subtle ways to drive attention, to kind of build mood, and to have your photos kind of be a little more convincing in what they're saying. Now, analogous is a little different from complementary. So analogous takes one particular type of color that is your dominant color. In this case, it's the just lightish orange, and it basically expands the colors on the left and the right of that to bring in more of that type of tone. So in this case, it's warm tones, but you can use analogous with blue tones or magenta. But basically, it kind of gives you a little bit more of a wider color gamut in that area of the color chart. So Dynapac is designed around mainly complementary and analogous color harmonies. Now you can see here in action, this is complementary colors in action. It's kind of what it looks like applied. And then this is analogous, and you can kind of get an idea of how analogous profiles will work. So you could use an analogous profile in this image, but because we kind of started out with it to being complementary to begin with, adding a complementary profile on top of it really brought out the obvious yellows and blues, warms and cools in the image. And you can also see that when you apply the profile or the preset, that it brings in a little more, keeps the colors and the skin tones natural, and that's by design. And the same with the analogous. Now, basically, I did a lot of the initial color work from Adobe Color, so it's totally free if you want to dive in, but you can check out color.adobe.com. And in the masterclass, we go in pretty deep in Adobe Color because there's a lot you can learn from it. So that's the color theory basics behind Dynapac. Let's just get into Lightroom CC now and kind of dive in. So in Lightroom CC or in any other Camera RAW application here, basically when you have your profiles, in this case CC is in the upper right, you can choose your profiles in advance and you get a slider. You can see the slider and you can slide left or right, or you want to decrease the amount of the profile or increase it, whatever you want to do, you can do that. And then on top of that, you have all your other adjustments. If you apply a preset from Dynapac, let's say in this case, we're started off with Oneg Super, you can kind of go in and you could choose analogous or complementary. If you choose complementary, you could see, oh, where is it in the colors? Especially in this case, in the point curve, that there's a little bit of work here in the blues and the reds. And then for some of the presets, you can also see that there's some work here in the color mixer. That is not the case here with this image. And there we go. So I want to kind of build this one from here to here. So this image here is of an editorial shoot I did with the EM5. Most of these are older files, but I'll show you a couple from a brand new latest generation Micro Four Thirds camera. So this was shot with an EM5 in 2011, I think, for editorial. Available light with a light fill. If you look in his eyes, there's a fill just on shooting down an umbrella. And I kind of helped him pop from the background. And you can see there's not a lot of adjustments here to it. Okay, we're using micropan, kind of tone it down a bit, but with one of the built-in presets. So let's start from scratch. This one is reset. There's no adjustments on it. Whoops. There we go. So what I'm going to do right now is go into presets. We know we want it to be black and white, so we're going to start with micropan. There's your out-of-the-box micropan, the faded crush, and then a punchy pan. Punchy pan, I think, is what I used for the other image, but I think for this one, I'm going to do faded crush. And I try to give them names that kind of make sense. Essentially, what we're doing here is, if you look in this preset, it's calling the micropan profile, which right now is set at 100. And then the faded crush means that in the point curve, we're crushing the shadows down a little bit, and then we're fading The black's just up a little bit. And again, this is per taste, so you can always just turn it off, turn it back on, adjust it as you want. Think of the presets basically as me kind of starting you off with the foundations of how I would process your image with black and white or color, because this is kind of where I start off with most of my images anyways, and I built them a little bit more detailed to include the profiles for you guys. So we can see here, if I take the slider from Micropan, close out the profile presets there, and I can reduce it or I can increase it if I want more punch. That actually looks pretty sick. So if I take it all the way down, it's pretty minimal with the Micropan profile. It's on 0%. All we got is the preset, but as we ramp it up, you can see certain things happen. You're seeing maybe more of a fade. So even though it's becoming more punchy, it still has that soft appearance. And that's pretty dope. And if you scroll down, you can see that there's minimal adjustments here. In this case, the black and white has some vignette and some dehaze. No sharpening, a little bit of color noise reduction. But again, this is just how I'm doing it with the presets, but you can go ahead and make them your own. Let's see. Here's another one. I just kind of want to show you the before and after. That's the original. That's the after, which is pretty cool. And I think for this one, we're using Oneg Super. Pretty much baseline, like out of the box. Now we can go in, actually, let me go back and we can do other presets. We could try analogous. I don't really care for that. Complementary, I don't care for that. Now you can always take the slider down, but I'm pretty happy with this one, just basic, the Oneg Super with minimal work to it, a little bit of sharpening, a little bit of color noise reduction. Let's look at this one here. So this was another cover I shot with the EM5, and out of camera it came like this, and you're like, oh wow, you really blew it. You blow it, buddy, but you really didn't, because when you add the right profile and do the right color work, you can go from this to this. And we could see here, if you look carefully in the sunglasses, you could see that there's just a front film reflector. I'm back there somewhere shooting, and my assistant is holding the reflector. So we have Oneg Super here at 81, and I don't know if we have any presets on top of it. It does not look like we do. So let's go to this image here. This is a version without anything. It's just kind of out of the box. There's Oneg Super. There's analogous. There's complementary. I'm just going to leave Oneg Super. If you have a lot of blues in your image, Oneg Super is very blue oriented, so be careful with the different analogous and complementary presets. Okay, and I don't think I really talked about that, but basically Oneg Super is analogous by design, so it takes a lot of the blues into consideration. Pannachrome BC is a little more complementary, so it takes some oranges and some blues and it does a little work with it. And on top of that, though, you can add an analogous preset or a complementary preset, which basically, in this case, expands, because it's analogous, more of the blues and greens and yellows, brings those into the color palette here. And let's see here, saturation. Let me see if it's here. Is it hue? No, that must be the point curve. You can see here what it's doing is bringing a little more of the blues and the greens and yellows. A little bit less yellows, but more blues and greens. And we do complementary. This is doing the opposite. It's giving us a little bit of the color from the other side. And let's see if there's anything here in the mixer. I forgot if there was or not. No, not really. But for this image, though, I think the Oneg Super right out of the box is pretty good. It's a little hot still, so I'm just going to take the exposure down a bit. We're kind of already in a sweet spot. And now I'm just going to play with the slider and go left. Let's see, no, maybe go right. You can see as you go to the right with Oneg Super, you're actually increasing your dynamic range, but you got to be careful because you can get a little bit of posterized effect. A way around that, if you have to have that dynamic range, but you don't like the posterized effect, then you could go into your effects sliders here, and you could try texture. It's looking a little crazy, maybe a little clarity, maybe a little dehaze. I don't really like any of those, so I'm actually going to bring Oneg Super back to baseline, maybe punch it a little bit more, and Take my exposure down one more click, and then maybe take the blacks down just a bit, and maybe take the exposure up a bit. That's a pretty good place to be. There's no additional saturation, I don't think. Nope. And I could even tone down the vibrance or the saturation as a whole just a little bit, just to make it look a little more natural. There we go. So pretty good place right there with him. I'm going to come down. Ah, there we go. Nice. And you can see here, it doesn't really do anything with the sharpness. It keeps it pretty minimal and natural. We don't get too crazy with the colors. It depends on the image though. All right, I'm going to show you this one briefly. So it's a wedding image I shot with a GH3 some time ago, and you can see the before and the after. I totally hosed the white balance, but the after looks super legit. Pretty straightforward. It's just Pannachrome, reduced the amount on the slider, and I upped the exposure a bit, and it looks like I did some color, some curve work here, so it looks like this is going to be, I want to see the complementary preset. And then of course the white balance in this image is all jacked, so I made a custom white balance. So off the bat, with this image, I'm going to want to change the white balance up a bit. We're getting there. There we go. That by itself is great. So now we know, cool. I think what I may do actually in this case is just go right to the profile. That looks good right out. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to tone it down some. And up the exposure a bit. Ooh. That looks really nice. It's not the same as the other one. It's kind of fun to mix it up. This one's more stylized. This one's more natural. But what a cool way to kind of go with this, right? Now, maybe what I would do here, because I want to bring in a little more softness to the highlights here. They're a little harsh, even though we basically went from this to this. So we can see we brought more detail in already into the highlights. But an easy way to do it in an image like this is just to go into your vignette. Where is it? And just kind of take it down a couple of clicks. There we go. You can see the upper left corner. It kind of helps. And then also we don't really need to see a whole lot on the right. We know it's wood. And we want to put a little more attention on the people. Their skin's looking a little yellowish and red. So I'm going to change the color mixer to hue, target the skin. And let's see here, I'm going to pull this back a wee bit. Now it's going to make it kind of reddish. And let me see here, maybe it'll take the white balance tint just a little bit, and then maybe cool it off some more. There we go. Much better. Not perfect, but you get the idea. We spent like a minute working on this. So that is with older files, but what about newer files? So I've been playing with a Lumix G9. I borrowed it from Panasonic for review. It's super legit. And I want to show you some home personal images, because that's where it all starts out for me. Come on. Let's get going here. Okay, so check this out. Here's the before. Not bad, because the G9 is I don't know what they did with that sensor and combo, and I'm using like a lens, which always helps, but pretty good out of the box. And then this is with my Pannachrome, the Dynapac Pannachrome profile with a preset built in. Look how nice it handles. It's going to res up on this, so give it a second. But I want you to see how nice it handles the skin. And here we go. I am going to turn off sharpening, turn it back on, see if it helps. Sometimes this stuff takes a minute to download because Creative Cloud is making too much money and they have too many customers or something. But here's another one too. You can kind of see what's going on here. Let me do this. I'm going to make a quick copy. and I'm going to reset this. So I'm going to use the preset, and I'm going to go in and hit reset. So now we're here at the very beginning. Beautiful. I'm just going to go into preset. We know it's Pannachrome. I think it is complementary, and then I'm just going to tone this down some. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. If I want to try with analogous, I could always kind of tone it down. This is looking too warm for my taste. So right about here is cool. Can zoom in. It's a pretty good amount of detail, but you can see how nice it handles with the skin. I'm going to do some sharpening here. There we go. Pretty good start for sharpening, but what a difference, right? So when you start off with a pretty good capture to begin with, especially with the newer Micro Four Thirds cameras, you can get a lot. And you'll notice that these images are really kind of popping with, they kind of pop, look like 3D. Oops. And that is by design as well, because when you're giving a little more dynamic range to the images, but you're also kind of keeping respect to clipping the highlights, and also respect to, while you're deepening the shadows, you're also having solid blacks in there, then you're giving your image more dimension, more three-dimensionality, and that's usually something people think is only possible with larger sensor cameras. It's just not true. The problem is there just hasn't really been RAW profiles specifically designed for smaller sensors, and that's what I did with Dynapac. Now I've done color work for films, for like motion pictures with major studios, to wedding videos, commercials. I've been doing it since the 90s. I'm really skilled with this stuff, and there's so much you can get out of these smaller sensor cameras that I think people just ignore it and go the other way to something larger, not knowing that what they have is way more than good enough. So that is essentially what, excuse me, Dynapac is. It's something that I built. It's a product that I built for you. I'm going to show you where to get it. It's on Small Camera Big Picture, of course, and I think it's $60. And you get an hour and 20 minutes roughly of the masterclass training where I take you through it. I show you how to install it on Camera RAW, Lightroom CC, Lightroom CC for mobile. It's all synchronized. It's friggin' awesome because you can do this on the go. Plus you get updates for life with all the stuff that I have on Small Camera Big Picture. You get updates for life. And if you're really getting some good features or some good benefits out of it, but you want to see a particular color, let me know, because I'm always looking for new types of colors to bring out with updates to Dynapac. Maybe that could be Mark II. So anyways, this is Julio. Thanks a lot for hanging in there and watching this tutorial on how to get high performance color with Micro Four Thirds cameras. It is possible, and more than likely the gear that you have is possible to do it, especially when you consider that the work that I've done was done within, some of it was an EPM1 like this one, EPM1, before and after. It's possible, guys, it's possible. All right, I will talk to you guys next time. If you dig the video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment. I will do my best to get back to you. Peace out.